Kia ora, Internet.
Hello and welcome to the Sky Bear Games podcast.
Same podcast, but new year.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Happy New Year, everyone.
Happy New Year.
And for our new year, we've got some new game recommendations for you.
Yeah, so we decided to do a focus on licensed games as a thing.
Now, of course, licensed games, there's a million of them.
And there are many, many bad ones. We're going to be talking about good ones. We're not going to talk about the, broad swathes of bad examples, unplayable things from back in the day like E.T. and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles is a bad example. I remember the Men in Black PlayStation 1 game. It was so unplayable it made my little brother cry.
But we're not going to talk about these.
No.
Now, the other decision we've made is we're only going to have one thing per franchise.
Oh, yeah. Because we could talk at length for a number of these. We could talk about...
A number of these have got good games that we enjoy over multiple categories.
Yeah.
But we're only going to have one game per franchise.
Yeah.
That's a decision we made. Now, traditionally when we do this, we pick one each for role-playing games, tabletop games, and computer games. In this one, the categories get a little bit more blurred into whose choice they are exactly. So we're both going to be talking about most of them.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of these are things that we've both enjoyed together.
So let's take it away.
Let's start it off with a role-playing game. James, you've been telling me about this game for years and years and years. Now, I've played a different edition, but you have always been telling me to take it back to the OG. Star Wars
D6.
D6.
So, Star Wars D6 was the original Star Wars role-playing game. My copies have got 10th anniversary of Star Wars stickers on them from 1987.
And they're so charmingly printed in that way that books back then were,
So there's all these inserts in them with ads for Join the Empire, A Proud Allegiance, or No Job is Over This Little Guy's Head for Why Not Buy an R2 Astromech Droid. What I like about Star Wars D6 is a couple of things. It doesn't have the same sort of mechanics to make your game be Star Wars in the way that's like the Fantasy Flight Games ones do. What it is, though, is it's just a quick, easy, rules-light system. So Star Wars D6 is based on having a dice pool. Character creation takes, for the simple version, about 5 minutes.
Oh, nice.
Where there's 30-something, about 36 pre-made characters at the back of the rulebook, which are all broad archetypes. So the cocky pilot.
And that's what you want with Star Wars, because it's made of archetypes.
You want to be playing the archetypes. So the taciturn bounty hunter, the kid, the noble, the... all
mentor,
of these, the mentor, the washed-out Jedi, the Wookiee, the smuggler...
The droid.
The droid. Anyway, so you just pick one of these archetypes, you customize it, and you're done.
Sweet.
Or you can create a new archetype from scratch, at which point your character creation goes from 5 minutes to maybe 10 minutes.
Wow.
Tops.
That's pretty cool.
Super fast, super easy. Because it's so rules light, most of the rulebook is actually just examples. And there's lots of charming examples either from the movies or from their very tongue-in-cheek sort of
in-world advertising.
Made-up stories. So I remember with all the Force powers, they've got little stories about explaining how this Force power gets used. And there's one which is the story of what happens when Luke uses the power to put himself into an artificial coma. And it's all the characters standing around at Luke's funeral, and 3PO is trying to interrupt them to tell them that Luke's not actually dead, and then Luke wakes up out of his coma. And
what I really like about it, that from what I've seen of it so far and what you've told me, is more so than the D20 version, the Saga edition, which is the Star Wars role-playing game that I've played. More than that, it seems like Star Wars D6 is about finding that happy place for both the game master and the players where it's like, we are just playing in a Star Wars playground.
Yeah.
Let's tell a Star Wars story. We're not doing like a dungeon crawl in Star Wars. Yeah. We're telling a Star Wars story.
So one of the things that I really like about it, the big thing about Star Wars D6 is that when it came out, there was no expanded universe.
Oh, right.
And as a result, Star Wars D6 is responsible for just about every single thing that underpins the entire Star Wars universe. All the names of the aliens, most of the aliens weren't named in the movies. All the names for the aliens, all the backstories for who they are, All of that stuff comes from the role-playing game.
That's amazing.
Twi'leks are
Oh.
from the role-playing game,
Wow.
just to take one example. And when the first novels were being written, because Lucasfilm didn't have any sort of reference guide to give them, they gave the first couple of writers a complete set of the role-playing game, and they used that as their reference material. And so as a result, it just became the basic world building for everything. But apart from that, because there wasn't much in the way of canon at the time, just the 3 movies and a couple of books, it's very just sort of, they just do what they want. They're just having fun with sci-fi. There's no real adherence to canon because there is no canon. So you get a lot of very just high concept. We're going to have a fun adventure in space. I can remember fun adventures where you're in an asteroid belt and you are trying to retrieve a prototype starfighter, where you're running around Tatooine with a bunch of suspiciously familiar-looking bounty hunters who are totally not the guys from Empire Strikes Back. Several of whom became major characters later on after this appearance. Trying to find a retired general in Tatooine, where you're in a crippled Star Destroyer that's starting to explode and you've got to make your way out. Where you are infiltrating a secret conference on a luxury baseliner. Just really fun, pulpy adventures with a really fun, simple system. I love Star Wars D6.
Yeah.
And one of these days, we're going to start a campaign of it.
Sweet.
One of these days.
All right, moving on to our second role-playing game recommendation. Different franchise now. Doctor Who by Cubicle 7. So I've played, I think, 1 game of this.
I've run 1 game of this.
Well, that was the game that I played, and we've actually talked about the Doctor Who RPG a little bit before on this podcast, within the context always of like games that drive the mechanics, drive the sort of role playing they want to see.
A couple of major sort of rules for the Doctor Who RPG. It's designed so that combat is virtually useless.
Yeah, you can't fight your way past the Daleks. You're not supposed to.
Yeah, in the core rules, there is literally nothing that you can do to hurt a Dalek. There's absolutely nothing. And a Dalek's weapons do instantly lethal damage if they hit you.
Yeah. So instead, what happens is initiative order is like if you are... Is it running first? It is, isn't it?
I think it's runners,
yeah,
then it's talkers,
then it's doers, then it's fighters.
Then it's fighters.
Yeah. So what a lovely initiative system.
Yeah, so if you want to run away from the Daleks, you'll always go first.
The other thing that they do that really drives the sort of roleplay that they want to see, because it's, based on a TV series, and
it's a very sort of airy-fairy TV series in a lot of places too.
It's the sort of thing that Terry Pratchett would say it operates on narrativium, rather than, usual rules of consequence and
Hard
stuff.
physics.
Yeah, it's... If you feel like the hero should win at this point, then they pull something out and they win.
So Doctor Who uses story points, which they also use as a balancing mechanic. So you can create as your character an incredibly powerful character like the Doctor, or a Time Lord, or an alien who is immortal, or who can regenerate, or is very physically powerful. Or you can be a
Regular
Joe companion from London. Both of these characters are equally powerful because of story points. So the less powerful your character is, the more story points you'll have, and these give you narrative control over the story. And this is a concept that a lot of games like having, that sort of narrative control, but in Doctor Who, it's the central mechanic that you use to affect the story.
Yeah, it is.
And you can do anything with it, from very small things of, look what I've got in my pockets. Or the standard use is if you surrender, you should automatically get given story points, which you can use to convert into getting out or whatever, which encourages another very common trope in Doctor Who. All the way up to, I build a machine that will do a thing, whatever you need it to do. All the way up to the absolute MacGuffins of, I absorb the powers of the TARDIS and become the bad wolf.
Yeah.
And you just need successively greater amounts of story points to be able to do these sorts of things. And you can also use them to affect your level of success, to make the Dalek lasers just miss you, which is how you deal with Daleks. You run away and then you just narrowly dodge the Daleks.
So what I really appreciate, just on a completely different sort of angle of this Doctor Who RPG, I really appreciate how, you know, in making a source book for each Doctor, which is 12, I'm not sure if they're going to do the 13th Doctor one, but in doing so, they've had to come up with some really creative ones to get around, like, the fact that so little is known about the 8th Doctor.
And the 6th Doctor.
And the 6th Doctor. So which one was it that they actually made the whole, like, Time War campaign?
So the 8th Doctor, the only canon thing that exists is one TV movie and one tiny little cameo special.
Oh, there are tons of novels and
there's tons of novels and radio shows
yeah.
with him, but they're not actually canon.
Right.
The canon in Doctor Who there's no such
The only
thing.
novels I've ever read of Doctor Who have been 8th Doctor, so...
As far as I'm concerned, there's no such thing as canon for Doctor Who.
Yeah. No, there's absolutely not.
Yeah, but anyway, their license only lets them do the official BBC stuff.
Right.
And so what they did was they wrote this big Time War campaign where you have to save the Doctor. He's been erased from time by the Daleks, and you've got to go to all the different adventures of his and go just after or just before the TV show is set and do another thing. And for the 6th Doctor only had 2 seasons, which were not very well regarded at the time. They wind up doing so much sort of retconning work to link the 6th Doctor into the Time War sort of mega storyline and provide all this connective material that's not there in the TV show. And it's really cool. And in addition to that, all the Doctor source books have got tons and tons of adventure ideas. They've got great sections on how to play in the style of a particular Doctor in a particular season and what the sort of themes and tropes are that you want to draw out. There's stats for everything, just everything under the sun, every character under the sun. And so they're a really nice reference guide as well as a really good role-playing source book.
Alrighty, I'm going to move on now to our first board/card game category.
Our first one here is Claire's pick, but we both agree this is the rare example of a licensed game that is so good, it's better than its source material.
So I started playing this a decade ago with a bunch of friends, and I said to James, like, I just want all of these, I want to own them, and he finally got them for me a couple of birthdays ago, all the expansions, and it is Battlestar Galactica. What? Like, this is a like 10 years old dead franchise.
I've heard they might be rebooting it.
Really now?
I really don't think they need to.
I don't think they need to. I don't know. I mean, it did get affected by the writers' strike, so it could be
Battlestar
nice
Galactica, if you're not familiar with it, was a TV show about the last survivors of humanity who are trying to escape from killer robots that can look just like humans themselves. And so there's this paranoia of who's, are you a robot? Are you a human? What's going on? How do we survive? Everything's going wrong. Everyone's at each other's throats.
And the game does that better than the TV show does. I do like the TV show, though. I like the first couple of seasons.
I watched the first 3 seasons. To me, it felt like they struggled to come up with new ideas, and they didn't always have answers planned for what they wanted to do. Whereas the game, by doing a laser focus on everything is going wrong.
Yeah.
Is it going wrong because everything is awful, or is it going wrong because there's a saboteur?
Yeah.
Is perfect.
Absolutely.
Absolutely perfect.
This perfect mix of anxiety and paranoia and,
The way the game works, everybody's got a character from the TV show. You are running around the Galactica, trying to do different actions. The Cylons, those are the killer robots, are constantly escalating their attacks on you, so new spaceships appear to attack yours all the time. You are desperately trying to prepare to do another jump so that you can get closer and closer to your final destination. And everything is breaking. You are constantly having to worry about running out of food, running out of morale, running out of people. Just everything is going wrong.
The main mechanic where it brings the real paranoia together is that you do a blind vote on resolving an event every turn. So something will go wrong, like there will be a revolt on one of the other ships and the president might have to make a call on what happens, and so everyone gets to vote. And
Everybody puts in cards anonymously, which gets shuffled.
and the deck does too.
And so whenever something bad shows up, everyone will say, oh, it wasn't me, it was the deck that put that in.
Yeah.
And so you're not sure, where did those cards come from? Was it one of us? Was it just bad luck? What's making this happen? And so that provides this really amazing paranoia, along with the natural stress of the game, with the Cylons just showing up out of nowhere all the time, and then you jump away and you get a moment's breather and suddenly, bang, they've caught you again and off you go.
Yeah, they keep the momentum really good.
Also, the game does secret identities at the beginning of the game, but also halfway through the game. So that somebody who was on your side might suddenly change sides halfway through.
Keeps up the paranoia.
Keeps up that paranoia. You're never sure who to trust right up until the end. Absolutely fantastic
You
game.
just spend the time just looking around the table, people just accusing people of being a Cylon for like any facial tick, any little reason. It's
I
good fun.
remember the first time we played, about 3/4 of the way through, our cooperative unity just completely dissolved, and all of us were just on edge, and it's a wonderful game. I desperately want to play it again.
Just with trader games, though, I would advise playing with a group of people that you do actually trust.
To not take it personally.
Yeah.
Anyway, on to our next one.
It's Mythos. What?
So all of these games we've chosen because they're easy-ish to get your hands on. Star Wars D6,
I don't know, Battlestar is a bit hard.
despite being very old, it just got a anniversary reprint. Doctor Who is in print at the moment. Battlestar is out of print now and could be a bit hard to get your hands on.
But then again, if you're anywhere like a board game store has a library, quite often board games.
It's a very popular game.
Yeah.
Mythos is a bit older, but every time it shows up every so often secondhand. I've seen it show up on Trade Me, eBay, and when it does, you can generally get very large amounts of it for very reasonable prices. We checked just before. Looks like the prices are starting to creep up, but
I wonder why it's gotten more popular.
I think maybe just age. Anyway, Mythos is the original card game based on H.P. Lovecraft's writings and the Call of Cthulhu sort of mythos. In it, you're an investigator who travels around Lovecraft country trying to complete stories. And the things that we like about this one, firstly, it's got the best timing rules of any collectible card game I've ever played. So one of the sort of bugbears of all card games is how to handle things happening out of turn order. And Mythos, its game structure is that when it's your turn, you do one thing. You can play one card, or you can take one action, and that's it.
Right.
And then it goes to the next person's turn, and they do one thing, and you just go around the table. You cannot take an action out of turn order. If you want to cancel somebody's action, you do it on your turn as your one thing that you do. And it makes timing and pacing very, very easy to explain. In Mythos, you've got these different stories that you're trying to complete, and every expansion set had a different theme to it. So the core set in the starters was New England horror, but then all of the initial expansion sets had a mix of cards from the core set and also a new subset that you could only get in those boosters. And what that meant was that you could get packs that would have things to do with specifically what you were after, as well as having all those sort of basic cool cards from the original releases. So you added in Europe, the Middle East, the South Pacific, and then in the next expansion, which is our favourite one of all, it added in the Dreamlands, and so you can go have fun with cats in your dreams.
The best part of H.P. Lovecraft.
Yeah, our favourite part.
Yeah.
There's also a final expansion where you can, which is set in the modern day, and you can go around and check out the FBI or whatever. But that expansion is very, very hard to find. I have one booster pack of it. So Mythos was designed as a multiplayer game. In the rules, you actually lost points for driving people insane and eliminating players.
Oh, okay.
And so what it wanted you to do is you have these story cards, which have got a sort of checklist of things that you've got to achieve to accomplish the story. And so you travel around trying to make friends with people, find tomes of dark magic and learn spells from them, go to different locations, have different events happen to you. And even if those cards get destroyed, they still go into your story deck, which is like a special discard pile, which you can check when you're playing your story card. And so if you meet, say, Randolph Carter, and then he dies saving you from a night haunt, you still played him, you still met him, and so he still counts for your accomplishments. But because it's focused on telling these stories, it tends to make very narrative games. You get themed decks where your theme might be to gather mystical artifacts and then go to the South Seas where you can summon Great Cthulhu and make Relaya rise from the ocean. And if you do that, you win. Or you can assemble a magical zoo in your dreams.
Yes! I want to do it!
There's also a lot of tongue-in-cheek cards. And so in addition to being able to meet all the characters from Lovecraft's stories, you can also make friends with a lot of the authors who wrote the stories. Or historical people from the time. So I remember if you get Harry Houdini and give him a shotgun, he's pretty strong. And there's other things like this. You can get one of the Mystic Tomes that you can get your hands on is the Call of Cthulhu RPG rulebook.
Oh god.
And then you can cast spells from it, which is fun. So it doesn't always take itself very seriously.
I like that.
And there's also a fan set for it that you can find online, which adds in Scooby-Doo. So it's a fun little game with good rules, with really thematic gameplay. It was actually overprinted to such a degree for its last couple of sets that it wound up almost sinking Chaosium as a company.
Oh.
And led to the company splitting up and having to sell off a bunch of its rights.
Oh, wow.
Which is a real shame because it's a really good game.
All right, I'm going to move us on to our video game choices. And the first one I'm going to talk about it's been a favourite of mine ever since we played it like 5 years ago, and we just replayed it on our charity stream. Lego Lord of the Rings, a surprisingly true to the books and yet also... Wow, yeah, the movies.
It's mostly based on the movies.
But it has so much little fan service in there that was unexpected for me. Clearly there were some people on the staff who put in references to things that they knew the hardcore fans would want to see.
So if you've played any of the Lego games, then you've played all of them and you know how this one works. So you collect your characters, they've all got their own different unique abilities, you play through the story and then you replay it with the different abilities to be able to unlock everything. You collect all the different tokens and achievements across the levels. But the Lord of the Rings one, it's by far my favourite.
Yeah, it's just a little slice above all the other ones, because for me the reason why is because of how much attention to detail they've paid to certain things of lore that, you know, a Lord of the Rings fan would know, such as, you know, you can be in that little place with the white tree of Gondor and you can be like whacking all the flags, and just that nice little detail that you're there and the white tree is there and everything. That's
you get to really explore the world. A lot of the other
Rivendell.
A lot of the other Lego games, your portal that you're in before you go to the levels is quite small. The only one I can think of that rivals this one is Lego Marvel, where you've got New York City that you can explore.
Oh, cute.
But even that is nowhere near on the scale of Lord of the Rings, where you can go to the Hobbit, Bree, Rivendell. You've got all these places that you can go to. There's so many puzzles that you can do
outside of the
levels. So many places to explore. And then the levels themselves, there were so many things where we said, oh, we'll never get to do that. And
then the screaming began because they actually went there. And the one thing in particular...
Many cool things that you can do. The big one for us was getting to fight the Balrog.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
As Gandalf.
You not only getting to fight the Balrog, but, like, you know, the other characters have gone off. You've already done like bits more level, and you think like that's the last time we see Gandalf until he comes back as Gandalf the White. No, because you get to fight the Balrog falling through the pit, and then you go, oh yeah, okay, I guess that's the last time we're going to see Gandalf. No, you get to fight the Balrog on top of the mountain.
Also, if you've watched our stream, you'll know this already, but if you can unlock the secret level, we won't say what it is here, but the secret level is immensely satisfying. It's a lot of fun. Yeah. It's just a really, really fun game.
It sure is.
Yeah. And speaking of fun games, the other one we've got, our final recommendation for today, is Marvel's Spider-Man.
I really enjoyed just watching you play this. I got such a visceral enjoyment out of seeing the whole of New York City rendered in exquisite detail.
It was so much fun.
I have no idea how much detail they took out, obviously, but it just looked
This is a game
surreal.
where there is a way to do rapid transit from one side of the city to the other, and yet it was more fun to just swing. And the city is so beautifully done with the colours and the different locations
And you
that you can go to.
You know, you get prizes for like taking pictures of certain things, so you actually are rewarded for exploring
the world. Or if you walk along the streets, you can do high fives with people going by, or do finger guns with them.
Oh my god!
And it's just a really satisfying game. There's so many classic Spider-Man characters and situations to be involved with, and many of them are done, I'd say, in a better way than many other media. I really enjoyed this game's portrayal of Mary Jane.
I really enjoyed watching the sneaking and the combat. I felt like they did those.
It was
well.
real. It felt like being Spider-Man. You had that joy of traveling through the city. There's a lot of levels where there's tons of guys with guns, and
so you want to do sneaky
you can
stuff.
sneak around and you can tie up people with your webs and then hang them from lampposts.
The non-violent resolutions were always my favourite part.
There's so many different costumes to collect and different powers with them. There's different gadgets to unlock.
They really went all out on this game, which is why it's so disappointing that Avengers is just like... they could have done the same thing, but they didn't.
I understand, though, that Miles Morales is a worthy sequel.
Yes.
I haven't played that yet, but
We'll have to get
it's
it.
coming soon.
Yeah.
Spider-Man is just such a classic character, and this game encapsulated for me everything that makes him a fun character. Narratively, being him, having all the different tools and gadgets, having the fun powers, the colourful villains, having New York as a location be so central to who you are. It was just so much fun to play.
And fun to watch. Which, like, you know, I only like watching certain games, and this was definitely one that I just got a warm feeling from just watching.
So, maybe not quite as obscure as some of the other ones. You might have heard of this game before, but we just really, really like this game.
It is a licensed game done right.
Yeah.
And you forgot your favourite part in it. J. Jonah Jameson.
Oh, yeah, you get J. Jonah Jameson doing his angry rant. So every time you do a little part of
He's got like
story,
a whole like Alex Jones radio show. It's amazing.
Every time you do part of the story, he will do a rant about where he reinterprets what you just did and says that it's terrible, and people will ring him up and give their story, and it's generally on your side, and he'll try and manipulate what they're saying. And it's just really fun.
Yeah.
I think I've heard that he's going to be a bigger part of the sequel, which has me excited. Oh, and actually, speaking of classic characters, we've said J. Jonah Jameson's a lot of fun, even though he's just a cameo, really. He's just a voice. I've said that Mary Jane is really fun. Aunt May is fantastic. Miles is in this one, and he's just such a fun character. But the character who probably gets the best story time, apart from Peter himself, is your good friend, employer, teacher, and mentor,
Otto Octavius.
Dr. Otto Octavius.
Oh, it's so... When that was dropped, I was just like, oh boy, we are in for it.
It's such a satisfying, slow build.
Yeah, because we know what's going to happen.
You know what's going to happen. You know who this guy is.
You've got all the dramatic
and you watch
irony
him throughout the game, and you've got this personal relationship with him. But a lot of the other villains are also really enjoyable as well.
Oh, like...
For a lot of the game, they focus on Mr. Negative, who is a slightly more obscure...
I wasn't going to say the spoilers,
villain,
but like...
Yeah.
You find out that Mr. Negative is connected in a way to your family, and that, like, sort of escalates the threat level.
Yeah, in that sort of classic Spider-Man way.
Yeah.
Really good game.
All right, James. I think that's enough. It's a shorter episode than we usually do, but let's do a few plugs. If you watched our stream and if you contributed to our stream the other day, thank you very much. It was most kind of you. It would be great if you could contribute to Project Northmore some more. And hopefully in the future there will be a lovely writer's retreat, and hopefully we get to go there one day.
One day when the world is safe for travel again.
Yeah.
Also, if you like this, please support us.
Yeah. Buy our games. Come on our Discord. Join our Patreon.
What do you think about these games? Have you played any of them? Anything you want to say about them as well?
Have you got any licensed games to recommend us? Or, conversely, have you got any to tell us to never, ever, ever touch?
Maybe we'll do that as a future episode.
Yeah.
Our cursed games.
Cursed games. actually, that could be a fun episode.
Yeah. But for now, I think that's us.
Yeah.
So, like, subscribe, follow, share, all those things.
We'll see you later.
And keep gaming.